Welcome back to Mindcast. I'm Will, and this is part 3 of our deep dive into the Measure of All Things series. Over the past 2 episodes, we've journeyed down a rabbit hole that, honestly, has completely changed how I think about AI and human knowledge.
Let me quickly recap where we've been. In part 1, we explored this radical idea that AI systems aren't actually trained on all human knowledge as we've been told. Instead, they're working with just the tip of a massive iceberg. In part 2, we mapped out what's hidden beneath the surface, the analog abyss of undigitized documents, the digital shadow behind paywalls, the ephemeral knowledge in oral traditions, and the locked vaults of proprietary data.
The picture we painted was pretty sobering. We're building the most powerful cognitive tools in human history on what amounts to a tiny, biased slice of reality. But here's the thing, and this is what makes today's episode so exciting. The barriers keeping this knowledge locked away, they're not insurmountable technical problems. They're human constructs, legal frameworks, economic incentives, ethical imperatives. And as human constructs, we can solve them. Today, we're shifting from problem to solution. We're talking about how to build bridges to these inaccessible worlds of knowledge. And I have to say, some of these frameworks are genuinely brilliant. They don't just overcome obstacles, they align with the core values that these barriers were designed to protect in the first place.
Let's start with what the report calls the analog abyss. All that knowledge sitting in physical libraries, archives, and museums. We're talking about centuries of human history and culture that's just sitting there, silent, invisible to our AI systems. The primary barriers are costs, technical challenges, and copyright law. But here's the reframe that really got my attention. To put this in perspective, the Vatican's secret archives contain 85 kilometers of shelving with documents dating back 12 centuries. The Smithsonian has over 156 million artifacts, with only about 3% on display. These aren't just dusty old books. They're repositories of human innovation and scientific discovery that could fundamentally change how AI systems understand our world.
The argument to institutions like UNESCO and national libraries isn't, "Please help us with our AI project." It's digitization is critical global infrastructure for the AI age. Think about it this way. In an era where knowledge creation will be mediated by AI, digitization is the only way these collections remain relevant, discoverable, and able to participate in forming future understanding. An undigitized collection, no matter how valuable, risks becoming invisible and silent.
The solution? A global public-private partnership, a consortium of governments and major technology firms co-investing in a global digitization fund. And here's the kicker. This isn't charity. The economic and scientific value that gets unlocked creates a clear return on investment for society. For copyright issues with 20th century materials, we need new legal frameworks for non-consumptive research, letting AI models learn from statistical patterns without violating intellectual property rights. Think about what this could look like in practice. Imagine a coordinated effort where Google's expertise in document digitization combines with UNESCO's cultural preservation mandate and national government's funding power. We're talking about AI-assisted OCR that can handle centuries-old handwriting, automated metadata generation that catalogs millions of artifacts, and machine translation that makes documents accessible across language barriers. The technical challenges are solvable. What we need is the political and economic will to make it happen at scale. Now, the digital shadow, that's all the high-quality information locked behind paywalls. Academic journals, news archives, financial databases. This content is essential for combating AI hallucination and grounding models in factual, expert-reviewed knowledge. The pitch here is pure economics. AI represents a massive new revenue stream for publishers and data providers. They can monetize their back catalogs on an unprecedented scale. Consider the scope we're talking about here. Elsevier alone publishes over 470,000 articles per year across 2,500 journals. The New York Times has archives going back to 1851. Bloomberg Terminal contains data on 100 million financial securities. All of this expert-curated content is largely invisible to current AI systems, which helps explain why they sometimes hallucinate on technical topics. The technical solution is fascinating. A standardized Research Commons API. This framework would allow licensed AI models to train on paywalled content in a secure, auditable manner. The API permits analysis of statistical patterns without allowing wholesale extraction of the underlying content, so existing subscription models stay protected while enabling a new market for training data. It's genuinely elegant. Here's how it would work in practice. An AI company would register with the Research Commons, pay licensing fees based on the data they're accessing, and then run their training algorithms within a secured environment. The API would provide statistical representations, think word frequencies, semantic relationships, citation patterns, without ever exposing the full text. It's like having access to the DNA of knowledge without being able to reconstruct the organism. Publishers get new revenue streams, researchers get better AI tools, and the public benefits from more accurate and well-grounded artificial intelligence systems. But here's where things get really interesting, and honestly, where I learned the most. Ephemeral and embodied knowledge. This is indigenous oral traditions, the tacit know-how of experts, entirely different ways of knowing that are crucial for building truly intelligent, culturally aware AI. The barriers here aren't technical. They're profoundly ethical and philosophical. The scrape and use paradigm of the open web, completely unacceptable here. Instead, access must be built on robust ethical frameworks that prioritize data sovereignty. The report introduces two foundational principles that, honestly, I think should apply way beyond AI. First, the CARE principles for indigenous data governance: collective benefit, authority to control, responsibility, and ethics. This positions communities not as passive data sources, but as active decision makers and beneficiaries of their own knowledge. Let me break down what each of these principles means in practice. Collective benefit means any AI development using indigenous knowledge must demonstrably benefit the originating communities. Authority to control means communities retain the right to determine how their knowledge is used. Responsibility means ongoing accountability throughout the AI lifecycle. And ethics means respecting cultural protocols, not just Western academic standards. Second is free, prior, and informed consent, FPIC. This isn't a checkbox you tick once. It's a continuous, living process of dialogue and relationship building. Communities stay fully informed and can guide, shape, and if necessary, halt the use of their knowledge at any stage. The argument to indigenous leaders and cultural custodians is about preservation and empowerment, an ethical, community-led process that preserves invaluable knowledge for future generations while ensuring communities retain absolute control. What does FPIC look like in practice? It means presenting information in culturally appropriate ways, using traditional consultation processes with ongoing progress reports and transparent sharing. It includes the right to say no, withdraw consent, and benefit from commercial applications. We're seeing pioneering examples in New Zealand, where Maori data sovereignty principles are being integrated into national AI strategies.
Finally, we get to the vaults, the highly structured, high-value data locked in corporate databases and classified government systems. This is the key to specialized, expert-level AI in fields from medicine to national security. The barriers are absolute: trade secret law, intellectual property, national security classification. But here's the paradigm shift that blew my mind.
New technology makes a previously impossible proposition viable. You can gain the analytical benefits of AI training without sacrificing security, privacy, or ownership of the underlying data. This shifts us from data sharing to insight sharing. Privacy-enhancing technologies, or PETs, allow for training without transference. Federated learning sends a model to the data's location for local training. Only the updated parameters come back, not the raw data. Confidential computing processes data within secure hardware enclaves, encrypted even while in use. Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine a pharmaceutical company wants to train an AI model to predict drug interactions, but they need patient data from multiple hospitals. With federated learning, each hospital keeps their data completely secure. The AI model travels to each hospital, learns locally, and returns with updated knowledge. The result is an AI system that's learned from massive data sets without any patient information ever leaving its home institution. Differential privacy adds mathematical noise to protect individual privacy while preserving aggregate patterns. Synthetic data creates entirely artificial data sets that retain statistical properties without containing any real data points. These aren't theoretical concepts, they're working technologies that provide the technical assurance needed to unlock the world's most sensitive data. Apple uses differential privacy to collect usage statistics from millions of iPhones without identifying individual users. Companies like Synthesis AI create artificial data sets of human faces that look photorealistic but represent no real people. The mathematical elegance here is remarkable. These techniques let us have full privacy protection with full analytical power.
But having the technical solutions isn't enough. We need governance frameworks to make this all work responsibly. This is where the report gets into what I think is the most critical part, the principles of responsible curation. Because access without governance is just chaos.
The framework rests on several foundational pillars. Data classification. Everything gets inventoried, audited, and tagged by type, purpose, and sensitivity. Data lineage and provenance. A complete, auditable record of where data came from and how it's been handled. This ensures transparency and lets you trace bias or errors back to their source. Data quality and integrity. Automated validation to ensure datasets are accurate and complete before model training. Think of this like a sophisticated library cataloging system, but for the entire world's knowledge. Every piece of data gets a detailed provenance card, where it originated, who has had access to it, what transformations it's undergone, what biases it might contain. This isn't just bureaucracy, it's the foundation that makes everything else possible. For example, if an AI system starts showing bias against certain demographic groups, data lineage tracking lets you trace that bias back to its source. Maybe it's coming from historical documents that reflect past prejudices, or maybe it's from a data set that underrepresents certain populations. Without this tracking, you're debugging a black box. With it, you can make targeted corrections and prevent similar problems in the future. But governance can't be an afterthought. It has to be embedded at every stage of the AI lifecycle. From acquisition and curation, where ethical frameworks like FPIC and CARE get applied, to model training with technical safeguards like PETs, to deployment and monitoring where you're continuously watching for performance drift and emergent biases.
Organizations need formal AI governance boards with representatives from legal, compliance, data security, ethics, and business units. At national and international levels, we need similar bodies to facilitate agreements and set standards for cross-border data access. These governance boards aren't just oversight committees. They're active decision-making bodies with real authority. They'd review data acquisition proposals, audit data sets for bias, and establish protocols for community engagement and benefit sharing. We need international bodies, similar to the International Telecommunications Union, but for AI and knowledge governance. bodies that can facilitate data sharing agreements between countries and provide dispute resolution when conflicts arise over data sovereignty. Now, you might be thinking, this all sounds great in theory, but are there any real-world examples? Actually, yes, and some are genuinely inspiring. The Maori Data Sovereignty Network in New Zealand has pioneered these approaches. When the country developed national AI strategies, Maori communities demanded the right to control how their knowledge was used. The result is Te Mana Rarunga, a framework that puts indigenous data sovereignty at the center of New Zealand's digital future. Microsoft's AI for Good initiative provides another model. When they partnered with the Smithsonian to digitize artifacts, they created benefit-sharing agreements that flow resources back to communities. Even J.P. Morgan Chase has implemented federated learning globally, allowing fraud detection systems to learn from worldwide patterns without centralizing sensitive financial data.
And here's something that really resonated with me: the new economics of knowledge. The scrape and use model treated data as a free resource to be taken. The new model treats it as a valuable asset, where creators and custodians get compensated. Clear licensing frameworks, data trusts, benefit sharing agreements that ensure value flows back to knowledge holders. For publishers, instead of losing revenue to AI systems, they become essential partners in the AI supply chain. Academic journals could license their content for training data, generating new revenue streams. For indigenous communities, this could mean revenue from traditional knowledge that supports cultural preservation and community development. Data trusts could serve as intermediaries, pooling resources from multiple knowledge holders and negotiating fair deals with AI companies. Think of it like a writer's guild, but for knowledge creators worldwide.
So, where does this all lead us? The report's conclusion is both ambitious and inspiring. It calls for building a cognitive commons, an ethically managed, representative, comprehensive repository of human knowledge. This isn't just about better AI. It's about ensuring that the partnership between human scholars and what they beautifully call the smart librarian unlocks a future neither could achieve alone. Imagine medical AI trained on indigenous healing traditions alongside modern pharmacology. Climate models informed by centuries of traditional ecological knowledge. Educational AI that teaches from the full spectrum of human cultural wisdom, not just Western academic traditions. The cognitive commons isn't just a database, it's a new form of collective intelligence that honors both human wisdom and machine learning, preserving cultural diversity while enabling global collaboration.
Look, the task ahead is monumental, but the cost of inaction? That's a future of biased AI, throttled scientific discovery, and a digital world that reflects only a sliver of human experience. We have the technical solutions, we have ethical frameworks, we have economic models that work for everyone. What we need now is the collective will to build something unprecedented.
So what can you do? First, if you work with data in any capacity, start thinking about governance frameworks. Not as bureaucracy, but as the enabling technology for access. Second, if you're in a position to influence policy, push for those new legal frameworks for non-consumptive research. Third, support institutions doing digitization work. It really is critical infrastructure for the future. If you're a researcher or academic, advocate for ethical data governance policies at your institution. If you work in technology, learn about privacy-enhancing technologies. These skills will be in huge demand. For policymakers, support funding for digitization projects and advocate for legal reforms that enable ethical research. Even as an individual citizen, ask questions about where AI training data came from. Support news organizations developing ethical AI partnerships. Vote for candidates who understand that AI governance is a fundamental question about how we organize knowledge and power in society.
Now, I want to be realistic about the challenges ahead. The economic incentives aren't always aligned. Many AI companies built their business models on free data scraping. There's also the classic collective action problem. Everyone benefits from a cognitive commons, but costs are concentrated while benefits are diffuse. The technical challenges are real too. Privacy-enhancing technologies are powerful, but not magic. There are always trade-offs between privacy and performance, and building international consensus requires diplomatic patience that's often in short supply in the fast-moving tech world. But here's why I'm optimistic. Every one of these challenges has been solved before in other domains. We've built international frameworks for aviation, telecommunications, and financial systems. The template exists. We just need the will to apply it to knowledge and AI.
And most importantly, whenever AI comes up in conversation, remember that the corpus of human knowledge claim is a myth. Our most powerful cognitive tools are working with a tiny, biased fraction of reality. That's not a technical limitation, it's a choice we can change.
That wraps up our three-part journey into the measure of all things. I hope it's changed how you think about AI and knowledge as much as it has for me. The future isn't just about building smarter machines. It's about building more complete, more representative, more ethical relationships with all of human knowledge. Thanks for joining me on Mindcast. Until next time, keep questioning the assumptions, keep exploring the implications, and keep imagining better futures. I'm Will, and this has been Mindcast.